Welcome to the behind the scenes of the Aligned Businesswoman podcast. I have a guest today, Natalie Berthe. And so you're going to be able to see the unedited raw version of what happens behind the scenes of the recording of the Aligned Businesswoman podcast. And then you can catch it next week, all edited, all prettied up, all dolled up with her eyelashes on and all that good stuff. So are you ready for the behind the scenes? Welcome to the Aligned Businesswoman podcast. Today, I have Miss Natalie Berthe on our show today, and we're going to be talking about cybersecurity. Thank you so much, Natalie, for being here. I'm excited to actually talk about this, believe it or not. It might sound a little geeky in tech, but this is something that sometimes we don't think about when we're starting our businesses. We just kind of like dive in, and then we're built this, strong following. We built all these assets, and all of a sudden, some weirdo comes in and tries to destroy what we created. So I'm excited.
So I'm just going to say this, you are being very kind in calling them weirdos. I use a lot of colorful metaphors, shall we say, when I describe those not nice people who come in and ruin people's businesses.
Yes. Well, I'm going to tell you a story, but I want you to kind of just say hello and say whatever it is that you want to say to introduce yourself.
Sure. So I'm the CEO and founder of Cybersecurity for Humans. And I created this business because we're missing a market, right? Most of the problems that we have with cybersecurity are actually not tech problems. Everybody thinks that cybersecurity is a tech problem, a tech issue. It's not. It's a people issue. It's a business issue. It actually has very little to do with tech, although we are trying to develop tech solutions for what's a human problem, which to some extent works, but doesn't always, because humans are uniquely able to overcome even the most, best tech support and protection, because that's, people do dumb things or brilliant things or whatever you want to call it. But basically, I started this company to support people who want to run their businesses, and want to stay safe online, but don't want to learn about cybersecurity. They just want to do their business, not having to get into, getting another degree in technology.
So when you say it's a human, it's more like human based. Are you talking about both the person that they get hacked because they're just kind of sloppy and they're going too fast, and then on the other side of it, the person actually doing the hacking? Or can you explain?
In cybersecurity, there's this concept called the human factor or the human element. It is the number one problem every year. Every report that's what's the status of cybersecurity in the world? It's always the number one problem. And essentially that refers to us on the front end, the users, not the what we'd call bad actors, right? Obviously, most of the time, we can get into the technology side and the back end side, but really my focus is on the front end. And so when we talk about the human factor, we talk about the things that we do or don't do that we shouldn't or should not do. So it's something like clicking on links we should do, or using easy password, or reusing passwords, or connecting with people without understanding, that they're scammers. It's just sort of it's a whole new landscape online. We all have to learn to cross the street and look both ways. And that's sort of really what we need to be doing online as well. So when we talk about the human factor, that's what I was saying earlier, is that all of the stuff that's coming out, all of the technology that's being developed is really focused on trying to stop us from doing dumb things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I recently got, and I was excited to tell you this story. I recently got an email in my spam. I hardly ever check my spam. And so I got an email in my spam, and it said, it wanted me to click a link. And I'm like, I'm not going to click anyone's link. Right. I need to click the links for my family when they send me DMs. I'm like, I don't know about this. But in there, it said, a while back, I blah, 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 hacked your stuff, and I've been following you. And I didn't really read it, all of it, because it was so long. But it was and I see that you like to frequent these adult websites and blah, blah, blah. I was like, no, but that might be a good, fun idea to do.
Right?
I just ignored it. It was send me money or something. I'm like, oh, Lord, I'm not going to click on your link. I'm going to report as spam, get out of here. But it's so funny.
I have a funny story. So my mother, right, she's in her 70s, calls me one day and she's like, I got this email and it says that, they've been watching me pleasure myself in front of the computer. And I was like, yeah. She goes, but now they want me to send them money and I don't know how to do this. And I was like, okay, so back up. Are you watching pornography on your computer? She's like, no. And I went, are you masturbating on your computer? Like, this is not a conversation one wants to have with their mother. And she was like, no. And I was like, that's how you know it's fake. That's how you know it's fake. So it was really, really big, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, where it was happening a lot. Like all of us, I know I've received probably a couple emails, but people get paranoid, not thinking about the logic about it. Like, who cares if you watch porn, even though porn is like the number one thing on the internet. But it doesn't matter. So, because what they're claiming is that they've taken over your camera so that they can watch you. And shut your camera. If you watch porn on your computer, just shut your damn camera and you're all set. Like,
that's so funny. I probably should save this episode for the flow of pleasure segment of my podcast. So funny. Okay, so I also have received an email saying we hacked your password from a specific website. And so how do we protect ourselves when someone else's website gets hacked? Like, what can we do in that instance?
Gosh, so that's actually that's the question, right? There have been over 181 million breaches in the last 10 years. It's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
That's a crazy amount per day. And the question is, how do we overcome those, right? Because all of our stuff has been stolen. There's a couple of things to do. This actually goes right to the question as to whether or not you use or reuse passwords. Okay. And I know it's easier and people don't want to have to learn how to learn different passwords. And frankly, the way I always say it is, if you can remember your passwords, you're not doing it right. You need to be able to, just because they should be random. And if you're using something like LastPass or there's NordLocker, there's a whole bunch of different, Dashlane. If you're using a password manager, you don't have to. And like my passwords are all random. They're all letters, combinations, numbers and special characters. I don't know what they are. I don't even make them all the same length. I change the length from 18 to 24 randomly, higher if I can get away with it. So when somebody reaches out to you like that, the first thing you do, not click on any link, is to go into that account, or you find out that somebody has been hacked. You go into that account, you change the password, and if necessary, change the email address. And that's pretty much all we can do. There is an email, there is a website called I Have Been Pawned, that I have been pwnd.com. And you can go onto that website and you can see which breaches your email address has been involved in. Oh, wow. And it's pretty eye-opening when you realize just how much your email address has gotten around. Good reason to have several different email addresses.
Wow. Wow. Okay. So what about the two-factor authentication? Does that really help, or?
It does. It does to some extent. Okay. And so it's actually now called multi-factor authentication, because sometimes it's just two-factor, but if you're using a third party, there's a lot of multi-factor authentication apps like Authly and Google Authenticator and stuff. And what they do is they give you a code, but that one changes, the code changes every 60 seconds, right? The website does that. Now it could be that they require your biometric, mostly it's thumb or face, sometimes it's eye or something like that, or they send that code to your phone or your email address. Now, if you do not have a great password on your email, then that's not going to be really particularly useful, right? Because if you're reusing the passwords across the way, then you're kind of, it's irrelevant, because they can access. And frankly, they can, if they want to, they can hack your phone as well. They can spoof it. There's a bunch of stuff they can do, but they can get that information. But it is way, way better. And for what we call brute force attacks, where they're just randomly trying to get in and they're not actually targeting your business, it's usually perfectly fine. Now, when it comes to social media and a couple other apps, but it's mostly social media, what they do is they say, hey, we'll give you two-factor authentication, but just in case you don't have access to your phone or something like that, we'll also give you a series of codes you can use, right? Mm-hmm. The problem comes in when your account has already been hacked and they have access to those codes. Mm-hmm. That is what the big issue is, especially with Instagram and Facebook, because both of them will give you codes. I think Instagram will codes, for sure Facebook does. And because you change the password and you're like, oops, I forgot my password, I'll use one of these codes. Anybody else can do that too if they're already in your account.
Yeah, so true. I never even thought about that. I definitely like to use a third party for the code. It's just, sometimes it feels like an inconvenience, but I'm like, no, it's okay. Let me just do this because all of my stuff is on, on the platform I'm logging into. The other day I was having a conversation with one of my Quantum Leap members, and she was buying a domain. And she asked me if I buy the extra protection. I always buy the extra protection. Now, the only time I don't buy the extra protection is I'm just using the domain to forward it to my actual website that has all the protection. So can you tell me a little bit about, like, am I doing that wrong? Or do we...
You want the protection. You want the protection. And the reason you want the protection, unless you're doing it through your company and your company has a PO box address, then it's a little bit less of a concern. But the reason you want the protection, that's a privacy protection. And what that basically does is it masks your name and your address and your phone number, your contact information from whomever is trying to get into that website, who wants to look it up, for example. So if you have, if your website is, VanessaAnnMiller.com and you bought aligned, whatever the whatever it is, right? You buy align.com and you're just like, oh, I'm just going to forward it to Vanessa.com. Then, you don't have the protection. They're still going to know who bought that second one. So yes, you definitely pay for the protection. It's a pain because, like, realistically, do they really need to be charging you $20 a year? No, they don't. But, your privacy is worth it.
What is if my address on my account is my business address and my business address is on my website, then is there any protection as far as I guess I don't understand, what's the point of they're going to be able to find that information anyway, right?
Yeah, but why make it easy for them?
Okay, so it's not necessarily that I'm protecting my people that are using the website, but I'm just essentially protecting myself. That was another thing that I thought about too. I was like, I want to make sure that anyone that's coming to my website, they're protected if they're putting in the information. So I thought that's what it was about, especially if it's on your own website.
No, it's actually that extra stuff that when you first did, it's a privacy protection. It's your own privacy information. Now, like I said, if you have a bricks and mortar business, then, if I've got the liquorstore.com and it's 14thstreetliquor.com, right? And that's their street address as well. That's going to be less of an issue because it's right there. I would probably still do it only because, unless, actually in the case of a bricks and mortar business, you're trying to get people to show up at your location. So then that's fine. The problem is that most entrepreneurs are working out of their homes. And that means that their business address is, their business address is their home address. And you do not want that information out there. You don't want it out there for a lot of reasons. Somebody could just be mad at you for some reason, decide to dox you. And that's not something you want to deal with. And doxing is publicly putting out your information, right? Just make it harder for them. There's no point in making it easier.
That's really scary. And, so in my past life, I say, before I opened up my online business, I was a financial services representative. So I sold life insurance, 401ks, all that. And there were times where we couldn't locate someone's phone number, but we had to speak to them because it was urgent that they're losing their benefits when they're leaving company. And so I would go to fastpeoplesearch.com and I would find everything on there for them. So how is that legal for, I didn't even have to pay for that. It was free. So how is it legal for a website like that to give so much information out on someone?
It's all publicly, they get it all from public sources. They just gather all the public information. It is information from something you might have signed up for. It's information from what do you call it? Property tax and, voting rolls and anything that is public information. They just gather it together and put it in a single place. Now, the difference between that is so the problem is we have two folds as small business people, right? We've got people who are looking for us individually, and that could be an ex, that could be an ex-business partner, an ex, love partner, relationship partner. It could be anything like that, right? And then we're also dealing with the bad actors who are just trying to make a buck. They're the scammers, they're the hackers, they're the one who are out there and doing their thing. And so you're kind of like, we're kind of going back and forth in two things. The random scammer is not going to go on to whatever website you checked out where you were able to get all of that information. Mm-hmm. And there is now a way, and I haven't yet done it myself, but there is a way on Google that Google will remove all of your information from the public view. The problem with that, again, if you're trying to gain visibility in your business, is that it's a permanent fix. Like they don't go, oh, you're okay with putting your stuff on here 10 years later. Too bad. Like that's not what they're going to do. So they just started doing that, I think, last year.
Okay. So before we wrap up here, what would you say is the number one overlooked thing that we entrepreneurs just kind of miss?
Well, I think that in general, I would say that cybersecurity needs to be prioritized. It needs to get bumped right up there to, it always fascinates me that people will spend $1,200 or $1,500 or $2,000 to have some lawyer submit their paperwork to incorporate when you can actually do that online for free. But then they don't want to spend, the less than $500 a year it's going to cost them to make sure that they're completely safe online. So I would say that if you're talking about cybersecurity specifically, there are a few things. The best thing that's going to help you is great passwords, and that means two-factor authentication, unique passwords for each one of your accounts. If you're traveling or you're not working in your home, you need to be using a VPN. I mean, there's a bunch of little stuff that once it's habits, you're fine, but they're new habits you need to do.
Well, interesting. Well, thank you so much. And before we wrap up and you tell us where to find you and all that good stuff, tell me, what are you reading or listening to now? Or what is your favorite thing to listen to?
Oh gosh. So I what I love to listen to is I was listening, This American Life. I was listening to stories. I love stories. So I don't do audiobooks. I'm a big reader. As of early November, I'm already at about 170 books so far this year, because it's both my escape and my self-care. And I'm a voracious reader, so I don't watch TV or do any of that stuff. And I read just about anything that I can. Right now I'm reading some paranormal love thing on another, mystery, something or other on another planet or something like that. It's not a planet though. I think it's just another world. Kind of fun. It's just, it's fun. So I'll read. I read everything. I'm just constantly reading news and stuff like that.
Awesome. I'm a reader too. So, well, thank you so much for being here. And if someone wants to come hang out with you and get to know more about you and your offers, where can they find you?
Sure. My website is cybersec4humans, the number 4humans.com. And that's also my handle on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, although I haven't done anything over there yet, and LinkedIn. So I'm on YouTube. I'm actually, that'll be on YouTube as well. So, but if you want, I've got a great newsletter that goes out that you can get that at the website. I also have a list of resources for people to go and check out. That Have I Been Pawned? Link is on my resources page. So, and I can also send that to you for people to be able to check that out. They will be blown away. That's always the thing. People go oh my God. So it's kind of cool.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I'm gonna have to get that too. So thank you so much for being here. It was fun chatting.
My pleasure.
Bye. Thank you guys, and I'll see you guys next week on the next